Everyone thinks they know me, the kind, reliable one who never causes trouble. But if they knew what I've done, the lies I've told to keep my life from unraveling, they'd realize I'm not who they think I am.
Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day.
It was one of those regular, noisy lunch breaks when our teacher, Mrs. Johnson, sat at her desk scrolling through her phone. Everything felt normal until it didn't. Suddenly she froze mid-scroll, her voice slicing through the chatter. Who went through my desk drawer? We all glanced around, but before anyone could process it, Cody, still holding up his phone like a trophy, piped up proudly, "We did, I swear." I will never forget the look on Mrs. Johnson's face in that moment. Her confusion twisted into sheer horror. Her phone slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. She gripped the back of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. We did," she kept whispering, like the words were being forced out of her lungs. Her voice cracked. Something in her just broke. She staggered between desks, muttering, "No, no, no," over and over, her body trembling like she just stepped into a nightmare. And we, a room full of teenagers with our phones out, kept filming. Because to us, at first, this was just more content for the TikTok challenge Cody had started while she was on a bathroom break. We thought it was harmless. She always had those little white mints in her drawer, weirdly shiny, but we figured they were just some organic brand she liked after coffee. So when Cody announced the teacher's desk challenge, we thought it was hilarious. Her voice rose, sharp as glass. "What did you take?" She was scanning our phone screens like she could magically pull back what we posted. "Tell me you only pretended to swallow them. Please tell me this was just for the video." But everyone knew the challenge rules. You had to actually do it for it to count. Cody's cocky grin had completely vanished now. He lowered his phone, mumbling, "We streamed it live after we found them. We figured you wouldn't care. You're always telling us to help ourselves to supplies." Mrs. Johnson's knees buckled, and she caught herself on a desk. Her face went from flush to ashen in seconds. "How many?" she demanded, fumbling at her phone, pressing the wrong numbers over and over. "How many of you swallowed them?" About a dozen of us, me included, slowly raised our hands. "They were kinda gross, honestly," someone muttered. That's when the doorway filled with Mr. Wright, our vice principal. He saw Mrs. Johnson's shaking hands, leaned in when she whispered something to him, and his face just changed. His jaw slackened, and he actually stumbled backward like she'd hit him. "You kept those at school?" His voice boomed across the classroom. "In an unlocked drawer?" The two of them were suddenly in this urgent, hushed argument while we sat there trying to figure out what we just swallowed. Some kids were already texting their siblings in panic. "We need to call poison control," Mr. Wright snapped, heading for the door. "Wait," Mrs. Johnson gasped, grabbing his sleeve. "Maybe we're overreacting. Maybe the dose isn't dangerous. Are you out of your mind?" He tore his arm free. "I'm calling for help. And you're explaining this to the superintendent." He disappeared into the hall. By then, our live stream comments were exploding with warnings. Did we just eat something toxic? Are we gonna get sick? The room tilted into chaos. Some students were hyperventilating. Desks scraped as people shifted nervously. Then the door burst open. Our nurse and an entire EMT crew stormed in with medical bags. They started checking pulses, asking if we felt dizzy, if our vision was blurry. Parents started showing up, their voices rising over each other. The hallway outside turned into pure mayhem. Our principal arrived, purple with rage. He went straight to Mrs. Johnson and hissed something that still echoed through the room despite him trying to keep it quiet. EMTs were on their radios calling for more units. Parents were demanding answers, threatening lawsuits. Finally, the principal raised his voice. "Listen, everybody, please stop panicking. Nobody's going to suffer serious effects." "What the hell did my kid consume?" one mother screamed, shoving past him. "They'll be completely fine," he tried to assure her. "The medication won't harm them." The room froze. "Excuse me?" the mother asked. "They were antidepressants. Expired 3 years ago. Totally inactive, like eating chalk," he said. Silence. Then a wave of exhausted, half-hysterical laughter rolled through the room. But 2 days later, I woke up with my stomach twisting like it wanted to crawl out of me. Panic shot through me. I told my parents immediately, and they rushed me to the ER. And when the doctors told me what I'd actually ingested, I realized I was about to become the most talked about kid in the entire school. The ER waiting room was nearly empty by the time Dr. Taylor finally waved us inside one of those small exam rooms. You know the kind, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, walls plastered with posters about hand-washing and anatomy charts that no one ever reads. He shut the door carefully behind him and rolled up on one of those squeaky stools, while my parents sat stiffly in the plastic chairs next to my bed. His face was unreadable at first, until he said the words that changed everything. "The blood work came back, and it's not what the school told you." My heart stopped. He explained that those pills weren't old antidepressants at all. They were something else entirely, abortion medication. Misoprostol. My mom's hand shot out and gripped mine so tightly I thought my bones might snap. My dad's face turned dark red, the same way he gets when he watches the news and starts yelling at the TV. Dr. Taylor kept talking calmly, explaining that it explained the stomach pain, the bleeding, the cramping. My brain felt like it was vibrating, his words echoing and twisting around until I could barely breathe. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands and opened our group chat, the one with all the kids who'd taken the pills. I typed quickly, "Anyone else having stomach problems?" Within minutes, 3 different girls messaged back. All of them said they were in agony. Sarah wrote that she thought she was dying last night. Arian said she'd already gone to urgent care that morning. The boys in the group chat, they barely said anything, just complained about feeling a little sick, but nothing major. Dr. Taylor jotted everything into my chart and handed my parents a stack of papers. Side effects, what to watch for, warning signs. He reassured me I'd be okay, but that I'd need monitoring. The ride home was silent except for my dad muttering the same word over and over again like a threat. Lawsuits, lawsuits, lawsuits. That night I didn't sleep. My phone kept lighting up with messages from classmates, questions flooding in. Was it true? What happened? Were the rumors real? By the next morning, walking into school felt like walking onto a stage. The moment I stepped through those front doors, conversations stopped. Heads turned. Whispering rippled down the hallway. People stared like I was some kind of headline come to life. Freshmen I'd never even met were bold enough to come up and ask, "Is it true about the pills?" By the time I reached my locker, 5 kids were already waiting there, demanding to know what the doctor said. I muttered something vague about not being able to talk about it yet, and that just made them hungrier for answers. On my way to the bathroom during second period, I passed Mrs. Johnson's classroom. The room was completely dark, the door locked. The substitute next door caught me peeking and said Mrs. Johnson was on indefinite leave. Through the little window I could see her desk, stripped bare. Even the framed photos of her kids were gone. Felt eerie, like she'd been erased. At lunch, the cafeteria turned into a mob scene around my table. Everyone wanted the inside scoop. Kids who had never spoken a word to me before were suddenly treating me like their best friend. Someone from the yearbook staff plopped down next to me, peppering me with questions about cramps, symptoms, medical details. The attention was dizzying. Part of me liked it, part of me wanted to crawl under the table and hide. Then Alyssa pushed her way through the crowd and dropped her tray beside me. She leaned in close, her voice low. "Be careful what you say. If the wrong thing gets out, the school could be in massive trouble. And we could get dragged into it too." She showed me her phone. Dozens of texts from her mom telling her not to post anything, not to talk to anyone. Her dad was a paralegal, and he'd already warned them this could spiral into a lawsuit. After school, I was heading to the bus when Jacob, the guy who ran the school paper, sprinted up with his recorder app already running. "Please, you've got to give me an interview. This could be the biggest story the paper's ever published. I need someone who was there." I told him I'd think about it. He gave me his number, saying he'd already tried Cody, but Cody wasn't answering. That night at home, my parents were in the kitchen when my dad's phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line from the school district read, "Important communication regarding recent incident." We all leaned over the screen together. The message looked polite, but underneath the careful wording, it was basically a threat. "Don't talk about this. Don't post on social media. Don't speak to reporters." My dad's face darkened. He started hammering out a furious reply until my mom put her hand over his and told him to stop. "We need a lawyer first," she said. Later, in my room, I checked Cody's TikTok. The original video was gone, wiped, but it didn't matter. Screenshots and reuploads were everywhere, spreading across Instagram, Twitter, even to other schools. The live stream had taken on a life of its own. And Cody? He'd vanished. No posts, no stories, no nothing since that day. Someone claimed they saw him at the grocery store with his mom, looking wrecked, refusing to talk to anyone. This whole thing, it was spiraling so far out of control, none of us had any idea what was coming next. The next morning my phone basically blew up before my alarm even had a chance to buzz. Instagram notifications were piling up so fast the screen wouldn't stop lighting. 300 new messages from kids at other schools. People I didn't even know were DMing me about what they were now calling asterisk, the abortion pill challenge. Asterisk screenshots of Cody's deleted video were everywhere with captions like, asterisk, "This school is going viral for the worst reason ever, asterisk." Overnight my follower count had jumped from a couple hundred to more than 1,000. My name was suddenly tagged in every story asking if I was okay. I kept scrolling, my fingers shaking, staring at message after message from strangers wanting to know if we'd really swallowed abortion pills and what happened next. Walking into school felt like walking onto a set. Hallways were quieter but heavier, kids staring, whispering as I passed. Between second and third period I ducked into the bathroom just to get away from it. That's when I overheard 2 teachers by the sinks. They were murmuring about how Mrs. Johnson volunteered at some women's clinic on weekends, one of them saying something about donated supplies. They stopped cold the second they saw me in the mirror. I pretended to wash my hands while they scurried out, leaving a silence that felt louder than their words. At lunch Alyssa pulled me aside to her locker, her eyes wide. "You need to see this," she whispered, opening her laptop. She'd found a cached version of Cody's original video on some random site and managed to freeze it at the exact second he picked up the bottle. You could see part of the label through his fingers. It definitely didn't say Prozac. The letters were blurry, but the word started with miso. My stomach dropped. I snapped a screenshot and emailed it straight to Dr. Taylor using the contact the hospital had given us. An hour later, During study hall, my cell buzzed with his call. He confirmed it immediately. The packaging matched misoprostol exactly. He even said he could write an official medical statement for my family if we needed it for legal reasons. That's when the whole thing started to feel less like a rumor and more like a case file. That afternoon Jacob texted me again about running a story in the school paper. He said he needed more than just my word, he needed other sources. I asked in our group chat, and 2 girls agreed to talk to him anonymously because their parents were already furious. The next day, one of those moms stormed the school during 4th period, screaming at the secretary about a cover-up. She demanded to see the principal right now, and her voice carried down the hallway like a siren. Teachers started closing their doors to muffle it. During 5th period, the loudspeaker crackled and called us to an emergency assembly in the gym. The principal stood at the microphone looking pale and exhausted. He said they were launching a thorough investigation into the incident. He insisted no students were seriously harmed and begged everyone to stop speculating online. But even while he spoke, you could hear parents arguing with security at the doors, demanding to be let in. After the assembly, Mr. Wright intercepted me in the hallway and pulled me into an empty classroom. His face was red and sweaty. "If you keep talking about this," he said, jabbing his finger at me, "there could be consequences for your academic future, your college recommendations." It wasn't even a subtle threat. And instead of scaring me, it lit something up inside me. We were the ones hurt. Why should we be silent? That afternoon Alyssa came over to my house. We went through the cached video again, frame by frame. That's when we noticed something nobody had caught before. On Mrs. Johnson's desk drawer, the one where Cody found the pills, there was a label maker strip that read, "Personal items." Right there in plain sight, she had marked it herself. When I told my parents about Mr. Wright threatening me, they were furious. That same night, they called a lawyer. Within hours, the lawyer emailed the district requesting every document about the incident, emails, security footage, everything. The next morning, the district responded with a letter instructing staff to preserve all records for potential legal proceedings. 3 days passed with everyone tiptoeing around school, tension so thick you could feel it in your teeth. Then Jacob's phone buzzed at lunch with an anonymous attachment. His eyes went wide. He slid his phone across the table to me. It was a screenshot of an internal email sent to all staff the morning everything went down. It clearly instructed teachers to tell parents and the media that the pills were expired antidepressants if anyone asked. The timestamp read 8:47 a.m., less than an hour after we'd swallowed those pills and long before any of us were at the hospital. Jacob immediately started screenshotting everything. My stomach twisted so hard it felt like a fist. They had planned the lie from the start. That afternoon I created a private group chat with just the 12 of us who'd taken the pills. I figured we needed a space to talk about what was happening to our bodies without the whole school watching. Within minutes everyone was typing. Patterns started to appear. The 3 boys in the group said they'd had some stomach pain for a day or 2, nothing major. Every single girl described the same awful cramps I was still dealing with. Sarah said she'd been bleeding for 4 days straight. Emily couldn't stand up yesterday. Madison had missed 2 days of school. Then one girl mentioned her older sister was in nursing school and had looked up misoprostol. Her sister explained it hits people with uteruses completely differently because it causes uterine contractions. That's why the boys just felt sick while the girls were doubled over in pain. The group chat exploded as the realization sank in. The school had to know this would affect us differently, and they never said a word. That evening, Cody finally broke his silence. He posted a shaky video on his main account, his face pale and tired, eyes locked on the camera. Over and over he kept saying he never meant for anyone to get hurt, that he thought they were just mints, maybe vitamins, that he only wanted to make content like everyone else did. But the internet didn't buy it. Within minutes, his comment section turned into a battlefield. People were furious, calling him every name you can imagine, tearing him apart for trying to save his reputation. Others posted screenshots showing him rifling through multiple drawers before he ever found those pills. Proof he'd been digging for something worth filming. 2 hours later the video vanished like it never existed. But by then, screenshots were everywhere. The next morning, during biology, a wave of cramps hit me so hard my desk rattled when I grabbed it to steady myself. My teacher's eyes went wide, and before I could even ask, she scribbled a hall pass and sent me to the nurse. I stumbled down the hall clutching my stomach, stopping twice to lean against the wall, while kids streamed past me whispering. When I finally made it to the nurse's office, she helped me onto the exam table immediately. Her face tightened as she scribbled notes and asked about every symptom. "You're the 7th girl I've seen this week with the exact same thing," she muttered. All of us had been in that classroom. That afternoon, a certified letter arrived at our house. It was from the district office, written in that polished, fake-friendly tone that hides the threats between the lines. It warned about not spreading unverified claims on social media that could harm the educational community. My dad read it twice, then crumpled it and tossed it straight in the trash. "Intimidation," he spat. "They don't care about you kids. They care about their reputation." That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to scare us into silence, I wasn't going to give them what they wanted. With Alyssa's help, I set up her ring light in my room and hit record. We filmed it 3 times until I finally made it through without breaking down. Just me telling the truth. The pills, the hospital, the symptoms. Day by day, what my body had gone through. No exaggerations, no guesses, just the facts. We trimmed it down to the essentials, clean, accurate, undeniable. Meanwhile, Jacob had been digging deeper. He texted me screenshots that nearly made me drop my phone. He'd gotten hold of EMT dispatch records through a public records request. The logs showed they were told misoprostol at 9:15 a.m. that morning. But parents weren't notified until more than an hour later, and even then, the school insisted they were expired antidepressants. Which meant the administration knew exactly what we had swallowed and still lied. That night, I pulled up Mrs. Johnson's contact in my phone and typed out a message. Would you be willing to talk? Just between us. The little read notification popped up within 5 minutes. But hours passed. Then days. No reply. My chest ached for her in a way. She had to be terrified. Of losing her job, her license, maybe even her freedom, knowing kids had gotten sick from something sitting in her desk. The next day at lunch, Cody appeared at my table. Shoulders hunched, eyes darting like he expected cameras to be pointed at him. He slid into the seat across from me and started talking fast. About how everyone had been bored that morning. How people were complaining about not having anything to post. How he thought the worst that would happen was detention. His voice cracked when he admitted he knew digging through her desk was wrong, but swore he never imagined kids would get sick. His hands shook as he picked at the plastic of his lunch tray, never taking a bite. The bell rang, and I left him sitting there alone. By the time I got to my next class, the whole school was buzzing. Jacob's article had just gone live on the school newspaper site. The headline screamed, "What really happened? Students speak out about pill incident." He laid out the timeline alongside the dispatch logs, showing parents hadn't been told for over an hour. Screenshots, student quotes, medical notes, everything lined up, without him ever needing to use the word lie. By the end of the day, that article had been shared over 300 times on Facebook. Parents were furious, demanding answers. My phone lit up again with messages from other schools. Is this real? Did you actually swallow abortion pills? Did they cover it up? That night, the school board scrambled, holding an emergency meeting behind closed doors. And the next morning, an automated call went out to every family. Mrs. Johnson had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation into policy violations. No mention of the pills. No mention of us. Just vague promises about student safety and reviewing procedures. When I arrived at school that day, 3 news vans were parked out front. Reporters swarmed the entrance, shoving microphones, asking if anyone would talk. My dad had warned me not to say a word without a lawyer, so I kept my head down and pushed past, even as they shouted after me. Inside, the hallways were chaos. Kids filming with their phones. Teachers snapping at them, trying to restore order, but clearly lost for words themselves. Then, during second period, the sound of chanting drifted in from outside. I peeked out the window. At least 20 people were marching in circles, holding signs that read things like, "Protect our children," and "Accountability now." The principal's voice came on the intercom, telling us to ignore the disruption and focus on our studies. But who could concentrate with shouting echoing through the building? By lunch, the crowd had swelled to nearly 50. Security had blocked the main entrances and funneled us out the back doors near the gym. The building felt less like a school and more like a fortress under siege. That afternoon in the cafeteria, Alyssa found me sitting alone, her face tight and shiny like she'd been crying in the bathroom. She blurted it all out in one breath. Her parents had watched the news, and they didn't want her involved anymore. No more helping with the investigation. No more screenshots. No more ring light in my room at midnight. Her mom was panicking about lawsuits. Her dad said colleges Google everything. She apologized 3 times before I could even answer, saying she hated bailing on me, saying she still believed me, saying she was scared. I told her I understood, and I meant it. But the words tasted like metal. She'd been the only person helping me document things properly. Now it felt like the rope I'd been clinging to had just been cut, and I was the only one still dangling over the drop. That evening, my mom drove me to my follow-up with Dr. Taylor. He didn't rush. He sat with me for almost an hour, going symptom by symptom, asking when the cramps hit, how long the bleeding lasted, whether I'd felt dizzy getting out of bed. He typed everything into my chart with careful, deliberate keystrokes, the kind doctors use when they know a judge or an investigator might read every line someday. Then he explained the plan. Blood work every month for the next 6 months to monitor hormone levels and make sure there weren't long-term effects from the misoprostol exposure. While the printer chugged, he said it plainly, meticulous medical documentation matters in legal proceedings. He handed us a crisp stack of copies for home. Paper armor. On the drive back, my mom's phone rang over the car speakers. Jacob. His voice was clipped, furious. Gwen Dallin from the district office had sent a cease and desist to the school newspaper demanding his article be taken down immediately, calling it false and defamatory, and claiming it harmed the district's reputation. Jacob said his advisor was already on the phone with a lawyer from a journalism foundation. They were fighting it because every timestamp and quote was backed by public records. "We didn't guess," Jacob said. "We verified." That night, our class group chat detonated with a new screenshot, this one from a private teacher Facebook group. Threads about the clinic donation situation. How to handle student questions. In the screenshots, Multiple teachers acknowledged Mrs. Johnson kept medical supplies in her room that she got from the women's clinic where she volunteered on weekends. One comment said a teacher had warned her months ago that prescription medications on campus could get her into serious trouble. Another comment had replied that Mrs. Johnson was just trying to help girls who couldn't afford care. I stared at that line until the words blurred. Help who couldn't afford care. The intent and the impact sitting side by side, both heavy. The next day, Jacob tried to confirm the source. He called the clinic. He emailed. Nothing. Hours later, someone finally returned his call, and all they could say was they couldn't comment. Privacy laws. He sounded crushed when he texted me. It could have been the smoking gun, but he respected their legal wall. If they bend rules for us, they could bend them against a patient, he wrote. He was right. It still sucked. Meanwhile, Cody posted another TikTok. He said he was taking full responsibility for starting the challenge. He called himself a dumb kid chasing engagement, swore he never meant harm, promised to be more careful. The comments were split right down the middle, half pity, half rage. Some said, he couldn't have known. Others said, he filmed himself digging through drawers. He knew what he was doing. He ended by saying he'd learned his lesson about going through people's stuff. Given the week we were having, it landed like a paper airplane in a hurricane. The next afternoon, I was picking at my lunch when a woman I didn't recognize slid into the seat across from me. She kept her voice low and her eyes on the door like she expected a camera crew to burst in. She angled her phone toward me. A photo of her and Mrs. Johnson at some volunteer event. Then she told me, quietly, that Mrs. Johnson had been helping students for years. Girls who were terrified and broke and trapped. She said the pills were for those girls, the ones who didn't have anywhere else to go. She begged me not to repeat it, said it would only make the legal situation worse. She's already facing serious charges, the woman whispered. I pushed the phone back with shaking fingers. My brain tried to hold two truths at once. Kids got hurt, and our teacher might have been the only adult some girls felt safe telling. Later, Jacob texted. Could we meet at the library to draft a follow-up? We grabbed a back table and spent 3 hours buried in public health stats, consent laws, and stories of teens shut out by insurance or parents or geography. We decided the piece wouldn't be another hit job. It would be context, why someone might try to help outside official channels, what happens when systems fail kids, and how all of that still doesn't excuse what happened to us. Jacob typed like his fingers were on fire while I fact-checked every line, chasing reliable sources for every claim. No guesses, no soft spots, just receipts. 2 days later, the district blasted an emergency email. A school board meeting with public comment would be held Thursday night. At dinner, we had the debate. Should I speak? My mom said yes. Let them hear a student who actually got sick instead of hiding behind memos. My dad worried about me becoming a target, then sighed and said the truth mattered more. I spent the next 2 nights writing and rewriting what I would say, cutting the anger down to clean lines, building a spine out of facts. I practiced in the mirror until my voice stopped shaking. Okay, mostly stopped. Meanwhile, Dr. Taylor called to say he'd finished a formal medical statement. He emailed us a detailed report confirming my symptoms matched misoprostol exposure exactly. Dates, labs, clinical notes, his professional opinion in black and white that the pills were not antidepressants. My parents printed multiple copies and tucked them into a neat folder labeled board meeting. We stacked it by the front door like we were packing for a storm. Thursday was coming. The microphones, the cameras, the people who wanted this buried and the people who wanted it dragged into the sun. I could already feel the gym lights on my face and the hush of the crowd when I stepped up to the podium, and I couldn't shake one question. When I finally told the truth into that microphone, who, exactly, would try to shut it off? Thursday night, the school auditorium was jammed wall to wall. Angry parents, cameras flashing, board members shifting in their seats like they wanted to melt into the floor. The air buzzed with frustration, reporters whispering into their microphones, while district officials tried to look composed. Gwendolyn stepped up to the podium, her gavel tapping for order. Please, everyone, settle down. But the noise barely dipped. When she finally launched into her speech, it was all slippery phrases. Medication storage policy violation. Improper personal items. She never once said what the pills actually were. Parents weren't having it. They shouted from their seats. Stop dodging. Say what our kids swallowed. Gwendolyn tried to push through, her voice tightening, but the crowd only grew louder. Then it happened. A father in the front row shot to his feet, waving a manila folder. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. I had the remaining pills tested at an independent lab. He pulled out the report and read it aloud. Confirmed. Misoprostol. Not expired antidepressants. The auditorium detonated. Parents on their feet, screaming about lawsuits. Board members huddled together, whispering frantically, their faces pale. Gwendolyn hammered the podium, but the crowd was beyond control. Finally, they announced public comment. My name was third on the list. My legs trembled as I walked to the mic, but I locked eyes with the board. I told them straight, the lies hurt worse than swallowing the wrong pill ever could. That being lied to by adults we trusted broke something in all of us. I described the cramps, the bleeding, the fear of not knowing what was happening inside my own body, while the school told us everything was fine. Some students clapped, then more, and for a moment I felt the weight shift. After an hour of parents and students unloading their fury, the board slipped into closed session. When they returned, their verdict came quick. Mrs. Johnson suspended without pay, pending a third-party investigation. Promises of new policies, tighter rules, locked drawers. It sounded like band-aids on a wound still bleeding. Parents kept shouting, "Who's accountable? Who faces charges?" The board chair banged his gavel, but the room was already lost. Outside, news crews went live, the glow of camera lights spilling across the school lawn. A reporter held up her phone with the police department's official statement. The pills were confirmed misoprostol. No more hiding. The district spokesperson, standing beside her, looked hollowed out as she admitted they couldn't deny it any longer. The next morning, Cody was nowhere to be found. Word spread quick. Suspended 3 days for endangering student safety. Felt like a joke. He'd been stupid, yeah, but the real damage had come from adults lying through their teeth. I posted on Instagram defending him, that if we wanted accountability we should be looking at the cover-up, not at a kid chasing views. That night, Alyssa texted me a long, heartfelt apology. Her parents had made their decision. She had to stay out of it. She promised our friendship meant more than any investigation. I wrote back right away, "We're good, always." And I meant it. The next morning, my mom drove me back to Dr. Taylor's office. He ran more tests, studied my charts, then finally smiled. "You're getting better. No permanent damage." Relief washed over me like I hadn't felt in weeks. He still wanted follow-ups, but for the first time it sounded like I had a finish line. A couple days later, Jacob sent our group chat a photo of him holding a trophy, first place in state for investigative reporting. His article had done it. In his speech, he said every single one of us deserved credit for speaking up. That same week, a thick envelope landed on our kitchen table. A settlement offer from the district. Money, in exchange for silence. My dad read the legalese out loud, then tossed it aside. My mom and I both agreed. The truth was worth more than their hush money. 3 weeks after it all began, I woke up and realized my stomach felt normal. For the first time since that day. Walking through the halls, kids stopped me to say they respected me for speaking up. A younger girl even asked for a selfie. It felt surreal, like I'd stepped into some other version of myself. Then the announcement came over the PA. Mrs. Johnson had resigned to pursue other opportunities. Later, I heard she'd already left the state. Part of me pitied her. Maybe she really did believe she was helping kids who had no options. Maybe she just crossed a line you can't uncross. The district rolled out new policies. Mandatory training for teachers. No more personal meds in classrooms. An anonymous student reporting system. On paper, it sounded like progress. One afternoon, I paused outside Mrs. Johnson's old room. Through the glass, I saw a new teacher arranging posters, setting up a desk that looked nothing like hers. The room was brighter, cleaner, different, and that's when it hit me. Before all this, I was invisible, just another kid. Now, I knew something powerful, that my voice mattered, that speaking up, even when adults tried to silence you, could spark change. Popularity wasn't about likes or followers anymore. It was about courage, about telling the truth when everyone else was whispering lies. And standing there in that hallway, I realized I found mine.
Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.